Today we're going to learn about mosaics. A mosaic is a picture or design made of tiny pieces of colored stone, glass, tile, or paper glued to a surface. Sometimes these tiny little pieces are called tesserae. This picture is showing a mosaic in process, and you can see how the artist has a collection of tiny little different colored pieces that they're laying out into a different design. Now, mosaics have actually been around for a long time because people in ancient times would take pieces of broken pottery or dishes, and they would use these tiny pieces to create something new so that they didn't waste those tiny pieces. So lots of times in ancient places like Greece or Rome, they found very, very old mosaics like these here. Now, artists today still create mosaics, like some of these examples, and I want you to notice how tiny the pieces are and how they're almost fit together like a puzzle. They don't just randomly glue on the pieces, they have to find pieces that fit together so that you don't see too much of the leftover background places. The background in most mosaics is black, because that really makes the tiny little pieces of tesserae stand out. Sometimes artists use paper or magazine pieces to create a mosaic, like these here. Let's learn a little bit about how we can use paper to make our own mosaics. The first thing that you'll need to do to make a mosaic is decide on your shape. Today, we're going to use a template to help us trace our shape of a specific letter. So we'll just trace around with a pencil, being very careful that our template doesn't move. And then when we're done tracing, we can cut our letter out very carefully. And I have one here that's all ready to go. Now, after you have the background laid out for your mosaic, now comes the important part. We have to decide what types of papers we're going to use for our tesserae. So we could use just regular construction paper. Maybe we might use magazine pieces. Maybe you could use pieces of painted paper. But today, we're going to start with just construction paper. So the next thing that you're going to do as you're collecting your pieces is you're going to decide what types of colors you want to use for your mosaic. I've decided for this one, I'm going to use a purple paper for an outline and then fill it in with some yellow paper. So I'm just cutting some small shapes. And I've decided to use squares for the outline. I'm just making a little collection right on my table. I've also decided that I'm going to use squares for the outline, and then for the inside, I'm actually going to be using more little like triangular type pieces. They don't have to be perfect. I'm just kind of making a little random collection right now because you never really know what size pieces you're going to need. Some of these pieces might work later on and some might need to be cut down into different size shapes that work better for the place they need to go. Now, one thing that is important is your mosaic pieces need to be small. I use the very tip of my pinky finger as kind of a guide. These pieces should not be bigger than that because if your mosaic pieces are too big, your mosaic won't look very good. So now that we have some pieces cut out, we're going to take our glue bottle, open it, and very carefully start gluing our pieces down. Now the trick is that when you glue your mosaic pieces, We're not going to put them right next to each other. We're going to leave the tiniest amount of black in between them. And I'm going to make sure that my mosaic pieces are right on the edge. This is also a really good time to practice your very tiny glue dots. You're trying to fill up as much of the black paper as you can without overlapping your pieces. You only want that tiny, tiny, tiny bit of black to show in between. Now, I've noticed that squares are a little bit easier to fit together, but when you start to do triangles, you're going to have to start getting a little bit more of a problem solver because they don't always fit the way you want them to. Like this little triangle piece here. If I put it here, it doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to turn it this way and then see if I can find another really skinny piece. Maybe this one. Ooh, maybe not. Well, maybe. If I want to, I might need to cut down some of my pieces a little bit, just to make sure that they fit the way I want them to. There we go. Now that one will fit without overlapping, which is just what we want. You want that tiny bit of black without overlapping. You can see that making a mosaic is a lot of work, but they turn out to be really, really beautiful when you're finished. You're just going to keep on going with your outline and your middle color until your entire shape is filled in with mosaic tesserae.